Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live. Tonight, we welcome back Joshua Mikel. Josh, thank you for being here with us. Before we get started, Josh is starring in an upcoming movie coming out June 3rd on Epix. It's called Unhuman. That is what we are going to be discussing tonight. But before we get to that, how you doing, Josh?
I'm hanging in, John. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you back. Can't believe so much time has passed already. So, Unhuman. I have to admit, dude, I really enjoyed this flick. It's fun, and the way the story is told, it's sort of like it's told through like a storyboard comic book way of how the director envisioned it. You've seen the final product. What do you think about how the whole story is told?
Well, well, first things first. I've received two links for the final product, and I
Uh,
haven't actually had a chance to watch it. I feel like such a piece of shit, but I I have a hard time because the only way I would watch it is on an iPad or my phone, and I don't want to watch it on either. I want to do it its due and watch it on my TV. So
no,
well, or on a bigger screen,
gotcha.
um so I haven't seen it, but it was a blast to make, and I've heard, I got to see a little bit of my stuff because I went in for an ADR session with the director Marcus Dunstan. Folks will know him from the Collector franchise,
Uh huh.
and just one of the sweetest dudes you could ever work with, and the whole cast and crew was awesome, and to work with Blumhouse again, that was a dream too.
You're gonna love it when you see the movie and the way they put it together. It is literally like storyboarding the sequences, and
Yeah.
and it has sort of a comic feel. Now, as we know, the movie is a comedy horror. Okay, now that's a very difficult. It can be sometimes tricky to pull off, but they pull it off very well here. What are your thoughts on horror comedies, which are really coming out in abundance lately? Do you like a good old, horror comedy?
Yeah, I almost prefer them. I'm not a huge. It's crazy because I end up in a lot of horror stuff. I'm not sure if I mentioned this last time, but I end up in a lot of horror. But I don't love horror. I don't love the violence of things. I have pretty vivid dreams most of the time, and it tends to cross those channels. But so stuff like Zombieland and Shaun of the Dead, I love Evil Dead. It's just that's actually kind of the stuff I really appreciate. Stuff that has a sense of humor, that isn't all torture porn.
Exactly.
Yeah, wildness. So yeah, I'm excited to hear that, and that's what I experienced in the bit that I saw. Is I think that, oh man, I think the editor's name was Chris. I hope I got that right. But the editor did such a wild job on Unhuman, and I think really probably changed the feel of the film in
Oh
a
yeah,
in a good way.
it
And
really did.
there's I think the nature of those projects, Epix, Blumhouse, those projects, they were shooting, I think, 8 movies kind of back to back to back, and they had a pretty short shooting schedule. So they, pulling off a good film in that short amount of time um, is hard enough. And Marcus actually accepted the job. He had to take over after the previous director couldn't do the thing.
Hmm.
So it really was the fact that the movie came together, and if you do like it, and hopefully folks dig it. I mean, what I saw and what I got to experience was awesome, and,
Oh
and
yeah.
working with the folks around.
And we're gonna get
um,
to your parts here in a minute. The synopsis of the
sure.
movie is basically it's a bunch of high schoolers, seniors in high school. They embark on a field trip, and on the bus ride to them enjoying nature, what the field trip is about, they get into an accident, and of course, things start to go sideways from there. Now, there's a quote in the movie.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't know if you heard it or not, but the underlying theme of Unhuman is bullying. Okay, and the effects that bullying has, not only on kids, elementary, high school, and beyond, but what I like about this, it deals with bullying in adults as well. Now, there's a line in the movie that goes 99% of teens wouldn't be bullied if they simply believed they didn't deserve it. So that's kind of a harsh statement right there, but powerful. What are your thoughts about the horror genre tackling on a subject matter like bullying?
I, it makes so much sense to me. To be honest, I think a lot of folks that find their way into appreciating horror, or appreciating kind of subcultures, and I think maybe more before Marvel became such a huge, Marvel and DC becoming such huge pieces of culture. I mean, that was nerd culture, and now it's popular culture. It really is. But I think that it makes complete sense to me that would be the case for this particular movie, and I think it's not the first time I think bullying has been tackled in horror, but it makes sense to me.
Now, Josh, I gotta tell you this. This is now the second time we've spoken. You're one of the nicest people out there, right? But
Thanks,
when you are in character, man, you can be just straight up evil. I mean, that's how good you are, okay? It's like, is that the same dude that I spoke to? I mean, because I'm going to give you an example. Your character in Unhuman, Chip, that's the name of your character, gives a speech on the school bus, a monologue that you give, and you knock it out of the park. All right.
Oh, thanks, man.
Now, did you get that on the first take? And if you did or didn't, what kind of inspiration, like for a scene like that, what do you draw upon to bring it and have such a powerful impact on the viewers?
Well, it's funny. It's wild actually, because Marcus, that was a day before edition, the monologue. Marcus told me he had written this thing for me or whatever, and I was excited to have a little bit more material. And then reading it, I was like, oh, this feels very much from Marcus's heart, and also, it feels very much from my heart. I didn't experience bullying so much as my brother did. I have an older brother, and talking about kind of like that transition of nerd culture into popular culture. My brother, I think everything that I think is awesome. That I play D&D now. I was into Star Wars and into Marvel comics. I was into more so Image comics, because that kind of coincided with when I was growing up. But I was into all that stuff. I had a reference for all that stuff very early on because my brothers were so into it, and so I have two brothers actually, both of which are artists, and being seeing how they experience life, and I was able to kind of cherry pick the cool aspects of those cultures, and walk away talking about, having conversations about the Watcher or whatever, and being able to have conversations about deeper Marvel stuff or deeper nerd culture stuff, because my brothers they so studied those worlds, but they were, my older brother John, I think, was picked on and suffers from severe depression, and so it all makes sense in experiencing the ways that they were picked on, and the types of people that picked on them. That I think that all came out. It felt very personal to me. And it was wild because that is one of the. I think the first time we ran through the monologue, I felt like I was connecting to the piece in a different way, and then even as I was working through it, you respond to good writing, and Marcus wrote a really nice piece there. And then I really hope I'm getting the name right, but I think Chris really did a nice job in the edit in that thing, because we did have to go back and pick up some of that stuff in ADR.
I mean, it had your speech. It was powerful. It has an impact. It's going to be
Yeah.
relatable with a lot of people. Not the speech itself so much, but the way you deliver it, and that's why I had to bring that up. So Chip, your character, obviously was bullied when he was in school. He's a
Yeah.
little bit older than the high school seniors. Uh, is your brother's story what you used as inspiration to sort of help you fill a backstory for what Chip is all about and why he's doing what he's doing?
No, I don't think my brother would ever got to the point where he was. I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah, exactly. I get
exactly.
you.
Yeah, but I don't. But just knowing, people you love and care about, and finding that commonality, and that's the thing I think a lot of folks that end up playing villains do, is they say, all right, so this person isn't me, but how could I become this person? How close am I to that?
Yeah.
And you realize a lot more times than not that you are a lot more close to that person. You empathize with that
Absolutely.
person, or sympathize, and sometimes empathize with that type of character.
Now, you have made a very successful career of playing the bad guy, but underneath that, umbrella of the bad guy, there are different types of bad guys that you have played. You have the Chips, who is a product of his being bullied and upbringing. You have people that you've played who are just flat out mean, and so on. Do you approach every antagonist role that you take on, trying to figure out what really is their driving force to make them be the way they are, whether it's they're born that way or a product of their environment?
Yeah, I think most of the time I try and find something that I latch onto in the dialogue, and say, all right, what do I identify with here? Like, I'm not a murderer, I'm not a rapist or a drug dealer, but what are the things? What are the things that the thoughts that have crossed my mind, and my better angels got the best of me and defeated those things, and I talk about it occasionally, like, driving is when I'm my biggest piece of shit, and a lot of people is because you have this wall of glass and metal in between you, and you're also driving a deadly weapon, so it's like it's like having a gun in your hand and pointed at everybody, and so you think the worst thing, oh, this piece of shit pulling up on my left, like, you are passing me on my fucking, like, I was driving back from Savannah today, and just thinking about, like, this piece of shit going slow in the fast lane, and this piece of shit passing me on my right, and, like, you don't know how dangerous that is, man, and, like, you got your phone in your hand the whole time, like, that kind of stuff,
Exactly.
We all have that stuff, I think. And I think the more you deny that you have those things, the more you become someone who doesn't understand themselves and hates themselves because they don't embrace those parts of themselves.
Absolutely, I completely agree. In Unhuman, it's weird. Every character in the movie has an arc. The high schoolers, everybody. The people in the beginning of the movie that you start out hating, you sort of may end up liking as the movie goes on, as when they're thrown into this situation and they have to sort of put their bullying aside, and you have the popular kids and the not so popular kids, and they have to work together, but yet there's still that animosity. You picked on me, you're bullying me. So, I mean, I love that aspect, as, within a 90-minute movie, you see these kids go from the beginning where the bullies are total dickheads, and you feel sympathy for the kids being picked on, to where everything is just flipped around 180 degrees. When you were reading the script, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was stoked about it, actually. The script took me by surprise, and I think in a 90-minute film, and especially a horror film, to respond to something emotionally is pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And it seemed like it's an interesting take on the stuff, and it's tough not to say too much about it. But
I know it's hard to walk around the spoiler landmine.
Yeah.
But the cast that they assembled, a lot of fresh faces, but they really did an excellent job.
Yeah.
Drew Scheid played Steven. Uriah Shelton plays Raymond. Brianne Jew plays Amber. Then, of course, yourself. You're like the veteran on the set. What was it like working with everybody else? And did anybody come up and, ask for advice? What was it like being on the set for the time that you were there?
Well, it's wild because those kids are so young, and they're so good. And oh man, Bree, I think, I mean, really knocked my socks off. She and she's the lead in the film, and I just give her so much credit because she's so good, but she also is so. I sat down with her one day, and she had a whole notebook of the script, and also a notebook that kind of accompanied that script, and had worked through all the beats. And when you're doing something so quickly, I think it was a 21-day shoot or something, maybe even shorter than that. But to be the lead in something, and they ask a lot of you, and then when you're acting these scenes scene to scene out of chronology, you kind of have to connect the dots, and that's a difficult task that I don't think you don't get a lot of training for that in whatever classes you go to. You get that training when you accept a lead role in something, and so you day one you may be shooting the end of the film, and day 7 you're shooting the second scene, and you're shooting something closer to the end later in that day because of locations and whatever else you need. So you're trying to connect all those dots in your head, and she had such an organized approach to that. She's going to be huge, I think. I agree. I don't see there's any way that she will not succeed in this business. And she's so headstrong.
And she put on a hell of a performance. Now, in the time we have left, in a few minutes, you have done a lot of stuff since you're a very busy guy. 50 States of Fright, you've appeared in that, and we actually had the writer and directors of one of the segments on that. 50 States of Fright is an anthology that came out. What was your experience working on that?
That was awesome. I worked with Adam Schindler and
Brian Nito.
And Brian Nito, yeah.
Those were our guests.
Nito. I don't know how he pronounces his last name. That's why I didn't say it. But Brian Neto. I think it's Neto.
Neto. Brian, I'm sorry if we screw it up.
Yeah, but those guys are sweethearts. And so I did a movie called Intruders with those guys that was a real contained horror film, and got to work with them again on 50 States. And, that thing was originally for Quibi and then got sold elsewhere. I think it's available elsewhere now, but
the thing about 50 States is as time passes, it's really gaining in popularity. It's becoming more and more popular. So
that's cool. Yeah, I really felt like, because I think that Quibi stuff was so interesting because they tried to break it up into smaller segments that really were larger episodes. And so once people can sit down and watch those things all together, I think that really helped. And for folks to have better access to it. Is it on two? I don't know where it's available. But
I see it advertised on my Roku. I believe
Roku, exactly. That's where it is.
I think it might be like on the Roku channel. It might also be on what is now called Freevee, what used to be IMDb TV. It's available on several different places. You also did an episode of Creepshow. What was it like to be reunited again with Greg Nicotero?
Man, that was awesome. I work in that show because I had auditioned for it a couple times, and then a number of times actually. And then they had that whole Marilyn Manson thing, and I had kind of committed to not auditioning for it again, and then they kind of denounced that motherfucker, and didn't air that episode that he had shot. I
Yeah.
had auditioned for, and my buddy Jordan Woods Robinson also auditioned for. He was on. He was also on Walking Dead.
Yeah.
And but yeah, to end up on the show and work with Greg again, you know, that was just, it was a cool experience. And the particular episode being the season 3 finale and
Mm-hmm.
having the tie-ins with Night of the Living Dead, you know, I just felt that was just very, very fortunate. And Christian Gonzalez, who plays the lead in that
Mm-hmm.
particular spot, is an awesome guy and an amazing actor, and has such a cool, like, Humphrey Bogart look.
Absolutely.
I don't, have you caught the episode? Have you had a
Oh
chance to see it?
yeah. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's slick. It's a slick episode, and I was thrilled to work with John Harrison too. And you know, that guy's amazing. You know, you end up on that show, and I feel like such a piece of shit because I'm, again, not the biggest horror fan, but I know everyone I'm running into is horror legend. You know.
Yeah. So, you know, you've got what stuff that's coming down the pipe for you that you're really excited about to come out?
Yeah, I was sitting around reading this book here, Manhunt. It's the 12-day chase for Lincoln's killer.
Oh.
I'm working on it's Apple TV show that will, you know, that
about
is
John Wilkes Booth.
about about the Lincoln assassination and John Wilkes Booth, and I play one of the co-conspirators.
Wow.
This guy John Surratt Jr. and just reading through the book is it's wild. Monica Belinsky, I think is how you say her last name. I hope I got that right. But she was a writer on Fargo, showrunner on Fargo, and just so the scripts are so good, and the book itself, the source material is great, and I play one of the co-conspirators, and the story around it, you know, people think they know the story of the Lincoln assassination, and I thought I did at least, and there's just so much to it.
Well, and that's going to be a TV series.
Yeah, it'll be a TV series.
Nice. Can't wait for that.
That's what I'm working on now, and then I did a movie called They Cloned Tyrone that should be out on Netflix later this year. I did a movie called Brothers with Sam Barbacow, who directed Palm Springs, if folks know that. And that's Josh Brolin and Glenn Close and Peter Dinklage and Brendan Fraser.
Wow.
But yeah, it's crazy. But
hey, you know, it's great, man. You're a busy guy. You've got all this work lined up. I mean, what more can you ask for, right?
I'm fortunate, very, very fortunate to be a dude of a certain look that I play a lot of shitheads, and I'm able to wind up in these projects that are shooting in Georgia.
That's awesome. Josh, I want to thank you so much for coming on here. You're a great guy. Again,
John, you too.
I talked to you, and then I'm going to see you again on the screen, and you're going to be playing a douchebag. And I'm like, is that really Josh?
Yeah, it's bad, man.
You're awesome. Thank you so much for coming on here. I want to thank our audience for tuning in live, and those of you who can be watching this later on. The movie, again, is called Unhuman. It's going to be on Epix June 3rd. It's a horror comedy. There's a twist in it that is going to really blow your mind. You will not see it coming. Check it out. What you think the movie is about halfway through, it's completely the opposite. That's all I'm going to say. It's just a real big twist. So, again, thank you to Joshua Mikel. And on behalf of Josh and myself, stay safe. Till next time, stay walking. Bye, everybody.
Take care. Thanks, Mike.